Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and guess what? There are now $20 smartphones available, and I just bought one from Walmart. This is their family mobile Alcatel PIXI 4, and it's an Android smartphone, and it actually performs halfway decently for its very low price. We're going to be taking a closer look at this thing and what it can do here in just a second. Now, I do want to mention, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one is reviewing this content before it is posted. All right, so let's take a closer look at the hardware now. This is a 4.5-inch device, and it's running at 480p, so it's relatively low resolution compared to most modern smartphones, but you're only paying 20 bucks for it, so there are things that you'll have to kind of sacrifice for that price point. But it actually looks pretty nice for the price. It reminds me a lot of some of the displays I saw on the first couple of generations of the iPhone that ran at a similar screen size and similar resolution. So overall, not a bad phone, especially if you're looking for something compact. It is an Alcatel PIXI 4. It has been locked down to Walmart's family mobile plan, which means that if you want to use it on the cellular network to make calls, you have to buy your SIM card and service through Walmart and nobody else. But the phone does work without activating it. So what I did is I bought the phone for 20 bucks. I didn't buy their SIM card package or any service. I took it out of the box, turned it on, and I could get all of my apps installed. You can even install things like Skype and other voice over IP providers and kind of use this thing as a tablet. So if nothing else, it is a $20 small tablet that can run Android apps, and that might be of interest to folks who are looking for some way to very cheaply get Android devices deployed to projects that they're working on. It has 8 gigabytes of storage and 1 gigabyte of RAM, but the storage is very limited as a result. It's running Lollipop 6.0, the Android version that's just behind the current version. I don't think you'll ever see an update to this, and that system software takes up a lot of room on the storage. So you have very little room to install games and other things, but it does support SD cards, so you can put an SD card in and have the Android 6 adoptable storage feature make that SD card function like internal storage, and that will give you some more room to put apps on. But the max card is 32 gigabytes, so relatively limited in that respect. Snapdragon 210 processor. It does support Wi-Fi. It also supports LTE and Bluetooth, so it's a pretty functional little device. It does not have a dedicated GPS chip, though. It has GPS-A, so that might limit some of your location stuff, especially if you don't have it hooked up to a cellular network, but overall, fairly functional. I do like also that they didn't give up screen real estate with the navigation buttons, so they are capacitive buttons here at the bottom, so you have the ability to get the whole screen here for watching media and other stuff when you're doing that. Not much to it otherwise. On the side here, you've got your power button and your volume rocker. On the top, you have a microphone jack up there for hooking up headsets. It does not come with a headset, but I'm sure you can find one relatively inexpensively. There are 2 cameras on here, surprisingly. So you've got a little low-resolution camera on the front. The best it does is 480p video, but it's good enough for making a Skype call or something. You won't look great, but you'll look passable. On the back, they have a 5-megapixel camera, and it's really pretty poor, but I didn't expect much out of this. What's funny is that the camera doesn't focus by tapping on the screen, and we've gotten spoiled by all these modern conveniences of modern phones. This camera is actually pretty lousy, so you'll see some image samples that I'm rolling in here, and it just doesn't look all that great. If you get in the right spot, you can probably take a halfway passable, decent picture, but part of the problem is that it's hard to see the screen out in direct sunlight to know if your picture is in focus or not. So if you are looking for a little device to be a smartphone camera, I don't think this is going to be the phone for you, but it's passable enough to get things done. The max video on the camera is 720p. The video quality is not great either, so I don't think you'll be launching your photography business or your YouTube channel with this thing, but it's good enough, again, to get the job done, especially given that it's only going to cost you 20 bucks. Now, the SIM card and SD card go in underneath the back portion here of the phone, like many others. The battery is removable, so I guess you could buy another battery if you want to swap them out. This is where the SD card goes. I got a 16 gigabyte SD card installed right now, and I had it set up as adoptable storage, so my apps now are installing onto that card, and the SIM card goes in there. I believe it uses a micro SIM, but not a nano SIM. I have to double check on the exact SIM size, but that is where the SIM card goes on there, and you got your battery here. What's nice is that the battery does last a good amount of time on this phone, primarily because the processor isn't all that powerful, and the display isn't all that powerful either, so the standby time has been pretty incredible. In fact, the first night that I charged it up. I actually left it just sitting in standby for about 24 hours and had very little impact on the battery. As you start doing things like running games and other things, that will tax the battery further. But if you're using this as a casual phone, I think you'll easily get a day's use out of this thing before you have to charge it again, because there really isn't much that will be draining this battery very quickly on here. And performance on the phone is what you would expect. It's not spectacular, but on my Wi-Fi network here, you can see how long it takes to load up a media-rich website. So it does have a little bit of a delay here as it renders everything in. This is actually in line with a few other low-end phones that we've looked at recently here on the channel. So it is going to be a little sluggish for doing this kind of stuff as you're browsing the web, but I think good enough for basic transportation, and certainly good enough for the price. And it does a little better with games, as you'll see in a minute. So there are some things that it does well, and there are some things it doesn't do so well. But I think if you're buying this for a kid, chances are they're going to be spending more time in apps than they might be browsing the web. But you can get a feel for how fast the web browsing is on it. So definitely not as quick as some of the other more expensive smartphones that we've looked at recently, but good enough. And I'll tell you what, the screen really isn't bad to read on either. I'm pretty impressed with that. I did notice that the touchscreen has a little bit of a delay to it, so a little laggy on the display. But again, not unusual for a low-end phone like this to have a little bit of that going on. I'll also show you some YouTube stuff so we can see how well it does video playback. So we'll pop open the YouTube app here and maybe jump into a video. You can see there is a bit of a loading time involved with this here as well, but we'll see what Adam the Woo is up to here on his travels throughout the United States. If you've never checked out his channel, it's definitely worth seeing here. I have found the speakers on the phone are actually pretty good, so it's decent for making calls, and even the speakerphone is pretty decent as well. So nice and loud and pretty clear. Certainly not audiophile quality, but good enough. But you can see here too that YouTube and other services should work just fine on it as well. Now, I was surprised that it actually plays games a little better than it browses the web. So check out Minecraft here. This is the Android version of it, of course. It's a little bit sluggish, but it's actually fairly playable here as we're moving around the world. It gets a little bogged down when there are some larger portions of things to render in, but generally I think it's a playable experience, especially if you're looking to buy a cheap smartphone for a kid to play this game. They will be able to play it on here and get a fairly decent experience for 20 bucks. Not too bad, and certainly a lot less money than a Nintendo DS or something like that. And the phone does, of course, have the Google Play Store installed, so most of the games that you can find on there will install on here. So a lot of the casual stuff, like the new one here from Nintendo, the Super Mario Run game, seems to be running pretty nicely. It does sometimes lag slightly here and there, but generally if you close out all the other background apps, it seems to run at a decent frame rate here and is very, very playable. So really pretty impressive, actually, with what you can do with this thing. I also ran the 3D Mark Slingshot test, which is a higher-end benchmark for graphics on Android devices, and I got a surprising score of 148, which actually puts it right in line with the Blue R1 Plus and HD that we looked at just recently as well. So it looks like it's got probably the same GPU on board, which is why the gaming performance on this thing is better than passable in some of my testing. I decided to take it a little bit further, too, to see what kind of emulation performance we can get. So I've got Wave Race here running on the MuPen 64 emulator, and as you can see here, it is a little sluggish as I'm playing through, but it actually is playable for some of these Nintendo 64 games also in emulation. So there are some things that this little phone can do that might surprise you for $20, and I'm quite surprised actually to be able to get this much functionality out of a $20 device. I was expecting a piece of junk actually, and this is far from it. So that is the Walmart Family Mobile Alcatel PIXI 4 smartphone, and I have to say, for $20, this really impressed me. I was expecting kind of a disposable piece of junk, and this is much better than that. It actually has some decent graphics performance, as you saw. It's passable in other areas as well, and really is better than I think its price suggests. Now, again, you're going to be limited in its network capability, so if you're trying to find a phone that you can go overseas with or something, this is probably not the phone for you because it is locked to Walmart's service. But if you are just looking for something maybe for you or for a kid just to have as a spare device around the house, this is much better than I expected it to be, and I think you might really enjoy using it as a little tablet device. And I do want to give credit to Liliputing.com. I'll put a link down below in the video description to their site. They looked at a couple of phones like this on their site, including this one, and that is what inspired this video. So definitely check out their site if you're a fan of what I do with a lot of these low-cost devices. So this is one I can recommend. Just know what you're getting here. Not a great camera, but a pretty usable phone for $20. And this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, including gold level supporters Mark Bollinger, Brian Miller, Mr. Morse, and Cody Falk. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.